Hi there. The Church of Nowhere has a new principle. What is really wrong principle? And I got this from cognitive behavior therapy. When you say, I'm really worried about the end of the world, what you could be really saying is that I'm worried about when I lose my job and it will feel like the end of the world. So basically, what I'm really worried about is my feelings that I might have in the future about something that happens that feels catastrophic, you see. And that's a pretty interesting kind of principle. So when you look at a group of people, um, you behaving in a certain way, you've got to ask. Well, you could ask this of the group themselves or members of the group. They say, well, what is really wrong? What are you really being concerned about? And for example, extension. I'm starting to say it now. Extinction Rebellion. And you could say that what are you really worried about? Why are you really demonstrating on the streets of London? There's all sorts of complicated reasons, personal reasons, collective reasons, social reasons. One of them being that that people can't get proper jobs now, they can't get anywhere to live, and there's a lot of anger at the generation that grew up in the last century, who've got tons of money, who are sitting on money in on property, and you can't get on the property ladder, and you're really, really angry about that. There's a lot of anger about that, for example. So what's really wrong is not climate warming. It's not climate change. It's not global warming. It's not the carbon footprint of the world that you're really worried about or angry about. It's about really your own situation and the situation of your own generation, that you've been literally hung out to dry. I mean, the corporations have taken jobs to India and Indonesia and China, on one hand, and then they flooded your country with cheap immigrant labour on the other, which you don't want to acknowledge because you feel guilty, because you feel like you're a racist. If you talk about, I don't want any more Poles and Czechs here, and you go into guilt over that. So there's kind of guilt and anger, and there's a lot of things going on. But what about the saving the planet? Well, I don't know. Apocalypse nowish, world savage. The thing is, we've been here before, and as I said, there's like thousands of nuclear weapons ready to go off at any moment. So that will be the end of the world, all right. And as to my great grandchildren, having to live on a planet which is mostly covered in water, I'd say, well, adapt and die, adapt or die, or adapt and die. Try your best to live. It's like future persons have no moral ontology. Really, you don't exist yet. So really, why should I care very much about you? But I do care about losing my job as a result of the company downsizing, which really means that they're going to export all the labour abroad, or get cheap labour to come into the country, and then I can't compete with their wages, so out I go. And also, people look at me and they look at my tattoo, and they say I don't like British workers. I would much rather have a Polish worker that's clean and hasn't got a tattoo and speak kind of nice English, and hasn't come from Dagenham or somewhere like that. I know it's kind of stereotyping, not very. It's not a nice world, and employers, they have the whip hand now, because there's no trade unions and things like that. So, they call the shots, and if they don't like you because you're wearing a tattoo, it's like, I mean, they can't say it, but they don't want to really have you, or they have you for the 3 weeks and then they let you go. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, so that's what you're angry about, really. It's not about the planet. Um, so you've got to ask this of other people and groups of people. What are you really angry about? What is really wrong with your life, or with the life of your particular peer group? And I think with this is a kind of, also a recognition, I think, of understanding, And this comes into a little bit of the forgiveness principle as well, because you got to understand that that people are locked into the system, and there's no way out apart from literally, you know, faking your own suicide or something, or literally joining the peace convoy, which doesn't exist now anyway, or going off and living in a field somewhere, living in a caravan, when it's cold and wet and damp, and pretending you don't mind. Do you know what I mean? So, the way out of the system is pretty catastrophic and leads to a lot of stress. I mean, I've met people who have kind of, bottled out of living in the modern world. And believe it or not, it's actually more stressful to do that than it is to stay within the system. That's my own sort of little tiny bit of evidence there, anecdotal evidence, which you can reject if you like. And then there's people who are stuck in the historical process. People ask why is English the lingua franca of the world, and it's literally because of history. It could have been French, it could have been Chinese, it could have been Spanish, it could be Esperanto. Do you know what I mean? It's literally just it's the historical dice being thrown, which determines what language is the lingua franca, for example. What language is the business language of the world? It happens to be English, but it could have been French. So history is almost like a dice being thrown, but it's also like a long row of dominoes. One domino goes over, it knocks all the other dominoes over. It's a chain reaction, and you're at the end of that chain reaction. You're stuck in the historical process, and you're stuck in the system. There's no way out. Basically, you can't change history. Do you know what I mean? And if you try to change, you can change the system, but some changed systems only last about 3, 5 years, 10 years if you're very lucky, like in the Soviet Union, and it all becomes crap and corrupt like it was before, with a new ruling class, assumes command and throws out all the competition and shoots people and is mean to people like that. But so basically, but also if you're going to critique a system or critique history, you can't really critique people. So again, if you realise that everybody is stuck in a historical process or stuck in the system, it's not about criticising Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson is bumbling about and making statements because he can't see any other way out of the system. He knows he's a product of history. He can't get out of the historical process. What can he do but say, that Islamic women are letterboxes and things? He almost can't say any other. So basically, don't take any notice of what he says, because all that he says is just window dressing. It's just playing to his audience. He's got like the man in the white van that votes for him, and the man in the white van, self-employed carpenters and business people like that. They are racist and sexist, because they're full of resentment about paying tax and not getting enough, not getting enough benefits from the tax they do pay, and they're, and taxi drivers of like hundreds and hundreds of regulations now. It's like running a Hackney service is bonkers, basically. And there's all the VAT and all the bureaucracy and everything. I mean, people, self-employed people, are tearing their hair out with it all, really. And then when business is bad, you've got no money, but you've still got all the bureaucracy and the VAT returns to fill in, even though you're not making any money. I mean, it's absolutely crap almighty. And so, once you see what's really wrong with people, like the terrible stress that they're under, belonging to a system that they can't get out of, and the system is being created by a historical process, you're full of compassion for people, really. You're really full of forgiveness and love for people, really. And I know you want to save the planet and everything, but you've got to do it in a way, I think, which causes minimal hassle to people, because they're in such stress. They're so jacked already, getting up at 5 o'clock to go to work, and then when they do get to get to the underground station, they can't, the train doesn't move because there's two people sitting on top of it with a banner. I mean, it's enough to make you want to kill somebody. Do you know what I mean? I mean, because you're so jacked and so stressed, and you think, well, if I don't get to work, when there's another HR review, I'm going to lose my job. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not going to pay my mortgage, and so people are angry about a lot of things to do with themselves, and they literally sort of say, I don't care about anything except my own survival. Do you know what I mean? And that the system has put them into that mode, of course, but the system has come from an historical process. So, once you understand that, it makes, the question, what is really wrong with people? And then when people kind of get addicted to things, it could be anything from computer games to drugs, recreational and prescription drugs, you begin to understand, what's really wrong, and the question is asked. And so sometimes it's good to ask people that question, what is really wrong. And sometimes you can ask that of a whole group of people, what's really wrong, what's really bugging you. And then the other part of this is that you could ask us of yourself, what's really wrong with me? What am I really concerned about? What am I really not doing in life when I should be doing it? And what am I doing in life when I shouldn't be doing it? Do you know what I mean? So then, you've got like, you look at others' actions in the light of what's going on in your own life, and you look at your own actions or own inactions or own reactions in the light of what's really going on in your life. And it could take a while for you to answer this question as well, because I think it's a complex question. And sometimes you can be avoiding the answer. So it calls for a lot of self-honesty as well. But I think a lot of people, the problem is that with a group like, or a campaign like Extinction Rebellion, they probably already asked this question. They probably know the contents of this video, and they've decided that even though they do understand the commuters' stress, and they do understand that Boris Johnson says a load of rubbish because he's part of the system and part of the historical process, nevertheless, even knowing this, it doesn't help. So you might as well be outrageous. You might as well do things which people hate you for. Because, and you can always retort, well, I'm not planting bombs. I'm not blowing myself up. Do you know what I mean? This is non-violent, direct action that I'm taking. And I'm taking it even though I know that the system is the system and history is history and your stress is your stress and everything. But the point is, and I know even that I shouldn't really care about my great-grandchildren because I'm going to be long dead, so why should I care? And yet, if anything can be done to reduce the planet's temperature, then it ought to be done within the bounds of reason. And of course, then we come up to the whole problem, of how a government actually balances an objective, which is perhaps to reduce carbon emissions on one hand, and the objective of pleasing everybody on the other, pleasing all the corporations and the oil companies and the energy generation companies and their lobbies. You've got to, and of course I know that the balance is literally on the side of the corporations, really, because they've got a huge amount of political clout. But for example, they've got not only political clout, but I mean, they could do really nasty things. Like, I mean, if you said, oh, well, we're literally going to cut emissions by next year, which would mean basically that people couldn't fill up their cars, except for one day a week or something like that. The petrol companies could literally say, right, okay, if you're going to play that game, we'll put an embargo on your country. We'll stop the oil coming into your country for a month and see how you like that. I mean, because their profits are on the line, and they might just sort of do anything like that. You might say, well, they couldn't do that, but they could. They could do it for a month, and then they'd have you on your knees, and then they'd have you like begging. All right, well, we'll take back that legislation, because they could do nasty things to you, things which are not altogether legal, perhaps, or international legal from the international point of view, but they could still do them, and they could still say, we're only going to get a fine. So if we do something really nasty like that and we get fined by the WTO or something, we don't care because our profits are on the line. And so you're not going to make us reduce our profit margins in this country by making us not sell petrol, for like 3 days a week or something like that. So we don't care about your objective of carbon emissions. We're here to make money. I mean, let's face it, it's like with Google and Facebook and corporations. I mean, they don't care about their customers, really. They don't care about freedom. They don't care about democracy. They don't care about anything. All they care about is making money. I've been through this before. Money, money, money. That's all you care about. You've got to think every minute of the day, how can I make money? How can I make more money? Because your expenses are going up and up and up and up and up, and you want to expand into new territory to make more money. So that means you've got to invest money. So that means you're going to be stressed out about that. So all you care about is money, and how can you expect a private company, private oil companies, private corporations, how can you expect them to behave any other way? I mean, their whole life is based on money and money making, and it's no good to someone like Tai Lopez saying, oh, it's not all about money. Yes, it is all about the money. Because when you're a CEO of a multinational company, that's all you ever think about all day is making money and making more money. Because if you stop making money, you'll go backwards, you'll go down. I mean, a fish can only swim forward. That's what a corporation is like. It's like a fish, and fish goes forward. If it doesn't, it drowns. If a corporation isn't expanding, making more and more money, it'll lose money very, very, very quickly, and it will go down. And we haven't started seeing corporations go down, but when we do start seeing that, then that will be the time to get afraid. But at the moment, and it isn't even about the corporations and the carbon footprint that they have. As I say, it's the carbon footprint of all the little people and the medium companies, the ones that find it difficult to make ends meet anyway. And they're just saying, what, more regulations, more bureaucracy, more inspections for factories? I don't think so. I'm really fed up. So what's really wrong behind the Brexit campaign? It's anger. Again, people are angry. The little man in the white van, he's angry. Why all this bureaucracy? Why all this tax? Why don't I see any benefit from paying so much tax? When someone on welfare gets all the benefit and I don't get nothing. You know what I mean? So they're angry people. They've been angry for decades over this. They were angry in the 1980s. They were angry in the 90s, angry in the noughties. And they're angry now about it, But all you can say is, well, that's the system, mate. That's the system we've got. It comes from the history of Britain or history of Europe. Adapt or die, mate. And they say, well, okay, well, I'm self-employed. I'm a tough person. I can adapt. Do you know what I mean? You won't kill me off, but you might kill me off with all this stuff about reducing carbon footprint, which I can't afford to do. I can't afford it. I can't even deal with the stress of dealing with it. I'm going to have a nervous breakdown. I'm going to be useless. I'm going to be in a mental hospital if you don't help me or somebody help me to get my company to reduce its carbon footprint. I'm tearing my hair out. I've got employees to worry about. I've got all this race relations acts and all this. I mean, you talk to a taxi driver on the way to London, and they'll speak for the little people, for the people that don't want to be part of European Union anymore, that are voting for Brexit. This is all about anger. So what's really wrong? And when you understand what is really wrong with somebody or what's really wrong with yourself, I think then you can take action which is sensible, and not just destructive action, not just action which is bordering perhaps on violence as well, and on disruption, which could cause violence, which could cause a breakdown in law and order eventually. You can when you know what's really wrong, you can take sensible action in concert with other people, and then we might be getting somewhere. And then instead of saying, I can't do this and I can't do that, it's like, I can do this, and then you get more confident, then you get less stressed, and then you're able to cope with stuff better. It's a virtual cycle instead of being a vicious cycle, do you see? So these are the kind of things that members of the Church of Nowhere think about.